The night air in Blackthorn was cold and sharp, but nothing was colder than the silence that fell over the great hall when Celine Ashford spoke the ancient words. Her voice did not shake, her eyes did not waver. She stood before the entire pack, before the stone throne, before the man she had loved since she was 18 years old, and she let him go. "I release you," she said. "By blood and bond, I release you." Alpha King Damian Voss stood frozen at the top of the steps, dressed in his ceremonial black, the crown of Blackthorn resting heavy on his head. Behind him stood Lady Isolde of the Frostmoon pack, silent and composed, already wearing the colors of a future queen. Celine had learned only hours earlier that Damian had signed the alliance papers, that he had chosen the crown over her, that the man who once told her she was his entire world had traded that world for land, soldiers, and peace between packs. She did not cry in front of them. She saved that for later, when she was far from Blackthorn, far from the pack that had once called her one of their own. 5 years passed. Celine built a small life for herself among humans, in a quiet town where no one asked questions about the sadness that sometimes crossed her face. She ran a little apothecary shop on a corner street, selling herbal remedies and soaps she made by hand. The bell above her door rang softly each morning, and she found comfort in ordinary things: the smell of dried lavender, the sound of rain against her window, the simple rhythm of a life with no crowns and no betrayals. She told herself she was healed. She told herself the ache in her chest was just an old scar, nothing more. She did not know that 400 miles away, in the halls of Blackthorn, the same ache was slowly destroying the man who had once been her whole world. Damian's marriage to Isolde was cold from the very first day. They ruled together, spoke together, stood together at pack gatherings, but there was no warmth between them, only duty. At night, Damian would wake gasping, his chest tight, his wolf howling inside him with a pain that made no physical sense. The healers examined him again and again, and found nothing wrong, no injury, no illness. Yet he grew weaker by the month, as though something vital had been cut away from him and never replaced. He told no one about the dreams. In them, he saw Celine's face, always turning away from him, always walking into darkness. He would reach for her and find nothing but cold air. He began to fear sleep itself. It was old Elias, the pack's eldest healer, who finally understood. He was dying himself, his body worn thin by age, and he called for the king in his final days. "The bond," Elias said, his voice a whisper, "cannot be broken by words alone." The words of severance were never meant to end a true mate bond. They only bury it, silence it. But a true bond, my king, does not die, it waits. Damian sat beside the old man's bed, his hands trembling. "Then what is happening to me?" "Your wolf remembers what your pride tried to forget," Elias said. "The bond is trying to return. And if it is denied much longer, it will not simply hurt you, it will kill you." Damian left the healer's chamber with a weight in his chest heavier than any crown. He thought of Celine's face on the night she left, the calm fury in her eyes, the words that had haunted him for 5 long years. He thought of everything he had thrown away in the name of duty, and for the first time since becoming king, he understood that duty without honesty was simply another word for cowardice. He found Celine's town within a month. It had taken careful searching, quiet questions, favors called in from old allies who owed him loyalty. When he finally stood outside her little shop, his hands were shaking in a way they never had before, not even in battle. The bell above the door rang as he stepped inside. Celine was arranging jars of dried herbs on a wooden shelf when she heard the familiar chime. She turned, expecting a customer, and instead found herself looking into the eyes she had spent 5 years trying to forget. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The shop was quiet except for the soft ticking of a clock on the wall and the distant sound of rain beginning outside. "You shouldn't be here," Celine said finally, her voice steady, despite the storm rising in her chest. "I know," Damian said. "I know I have no right to be here, but I need to speak with you, please." She crossed her arms, refusing to let old feelings soften her. "You made your choice 5 years ago, Damian, in front of everyone. You don't get to walk into my life again just because you changed your mind." "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he said quietly. I'm not even asking you to listen to my excuses, because I don't have any that are good enough. I made a mistake that cost me the person I loved most, and I have spent every day since regretting it. I came here because I owe you the truth, whether or not it changes anything between us. Celine studied him for a long moment. The proud king who once stood untouchable on his throne now stood before her looking tired, thinner than she remembered, his eyes shadowed with something that looked like real suffering. Still, she was not ready to let her guard down. Say what you came to say, she said, then go. Damian took a slow breath. The pack elders pressured me for years to secure an alliance with Frostmoon. They said war was coming, that without the alliance, Blackthorn would fall. I was young in my rule then, afraid of failing my people, afraid of being remembered as the king who lost everything. I told myself that choosing the alliance was choosing strength. I told myself it was the right thing to do for everyone. But the truth is simpler and uglier than that. I was afraid of standing against the elders, afraid of trusting that our bond alone could carry us through hard times. So I chose the easier path, and I broke the truest thing I had ever known to do it. Celine's throat tightened, but she kept her voice firm. You didn't just choose an alliance, Damian. You humiliated me in front of your entire court. You let me find out from someone else's mouth that you had already signed the papers. You let me stand there like a fool while you planned your future with someone else. I know, he said, his voice breaking slightly, and there is no excuse for that. I was a coward in more ways than one. I should have told you myself, long before that night. I should have fought for us, instead of hiding behind duty. I failed you, Celine. Completely and without excuse. For a long moment, she said nothing. Rain tapped softly against the shop window, filling the silence between them. She had imagined this moment countless times over the years, imagined all the things she would say if he ever stood before her again. Now that the moment had come, she found herself simply feeling tired, the old anger mixing with a grief she had never fully released. Why are you really here, Damian? She asked finally. Guilt doesn't usually send kings on journeys like this. He hesitated, then told her everything Elias had explained, about the bond that never truly died, about the pain slowly breaking him apart from the inside, about nights he feared he would not survive. He did not ask her for anything, he simply laid the truth before her, as plainly as he could. Celine listened in silence, her arms still crossed, though something in her expression had softened by the time he finished. So you're saying if I don't help you, you might die, she said slowly. That's the truth of it, Damian admitted. But I am not asking you to fix me, Celine. Even if the bond is real, even if it is hurting me, I will not force you into anything simply to save my own life. You deserve better than being treated as a cure. I came to tell you the truth, and to apologize properly, the way I should have 5 years ago. Whatever happens after that is entirely your choice. Something in his words struck her deeply. This was not the same man who once stood silently beside Isolde while Celine's world fell apart. This man stood before her without his crown, without his court, offering nothing but honesty and the weight of his own mistakes. Still, she did not answer him that day. She asked him to leave, and to her surprise, he did, without argument, without pressure, leaving only a small piece of parchment with the name of the inn where he was staying, in case she wished to speak again. For 3 days, Celine wrestled with herself. She thought of the years she had spent building a peaceful life, free from the chaos of pack politics and broken promises. She thought of the girl she used to be, so certain that love alone would be enough to protect her heart. She thought, too, of the man who had returned to her, not as a king demanding his mate, but as someone finally willing to be honest about his failures. On the 4th day, she walked to the inn. Damian looked pale and weaker than before, dark circles beneath his eyes, his hands trembling slightly as he rose to greet her. Yet the moment he saw her, something in his expression eased, as though simply being near her lessened the pain, even a little. I'm not doing this because the bond demands it, Celine said, standing firm in the doorway. And I am certainly not doing this to become your queen again, standing quietly beside a throne, while you make decisions without me. If we do this, it will be different. I will not be hidden. I will not be silenced. I will not be the woman you choose to protect, only when it's convenient. I understand, Damian said quietly. I don't want that version of us either. I want to build something honest this time, something built on truth instead of duty. Slowly, carefully, Celine stepped closer and placed her hand against his chest, over the place where his heart beat unevenly beneath his skin. The moment their skin touched, something ancient stirred between them, a warmth neither of them had felt in 5 long years. Damian gasped softly as the pain that had haunted him for months began to ease, the bond reawakening not with force, but with quiet, steady relief. Tears gathered in Celine's eyes despite her best effort to remain composed. I hated you for so long, she whispered. I know, Damian said, his own voice thick with emotion. I hated myself more. They stood together in the quiet inn-room as the bond settled fully back into place, a warmth spreading through both of them that neither words nor time could fully explain. It was not a magical fix to years of pain, not an instant forgiveness of everything that had been broken. It was simply a beginning, fragile and honest, built on truth instead of hidden promises. In the months that followed, Damian ended his political marriage to Isolde, who accepted the news with quiet understanding, having long recognized the coldness between them for what it was. He stood before the pack of Blackthorn and spoke openly of his mistakes, refusing to hide behind the comfortable silence kings often use to protect their reputations. He told his people the truth, that pride and fear had once led him to break the truest bond he would ever know, and that he intended to spend the rest of his life proving himself worthy of a second chance. Celine did not return to Blackthorn as a quiet queen standing in her mate's shadow. She returned as his equal, her voice present in every decision, her opinions respected by a court that quickly learned she would not be silenced again. She kept her apothecary shop, dividing her time between the human town she had grown to love and the pack she had once fled. The bond between them, tested by years of separation and pain, grew slowly into something stronger than it had ever been before, not because it had never broken, but because they had chosen, this time, to build it honestly, brick by brick, truth by truth. And though the scars of betrayal never fully disappeared, they became something else over time, proof, perhaps, that even the deepest wounds could heal, when two people were finally brave enough to be honest with each other and with themselves.